All right. So I just had a conversation with my brothers last night, and it was so helpful. And we've been having more and more of these. But I wanted to discuss this or really share sort of what went down and how it hit me this morning how important the advice was from my big brother. Um, so uh, I just want to preface this by my communication styles. I go sort of all over the place, but I took something away that wasn't. I took what was intended, but I also took something that wasn't intended, but hit even deeper than what was intended, right? So I got the advice that was given, and then anyway, so I'll kind of get into the story, but I say that to say that at any point in this, you can grasp what you want. And I think a lot of people try to, just get what the intended advice is. And then they start looking for what the intended advice is, um, or what have you. This isn't necessarily advice. Anyway, all right. See, that's part of my problem, right? So let me tell you, the discussion started. I'm an entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur over the past 15 plus years, right? And of course, my brothers, they didn't really go that route. They went the successful being an employee route, right? And so me and my little brother were having a discussion because we had a discussion about applying places and stating what your experience was, right? I'm not going to go into detail what the actual experience was, what the job that was being applied for like you know, um, a higher move, right? Like when you go from one job to another, you want to elevate, right? So the advice that was given, I guess, that I mainly got is I got the perspective, and I'm always learning from people that are employed as opposed to self employed. And so I learned about how people apply, and I was expressing my frustration when guys apply for a job with me and they tell me, like, oh, I have X number of years, and it'll be some 5, 10, 20 years experience doing something. And then they come on board and they're really, they're really trash. And in my perspective, right? And so we were kind of debating this, and it was, a lot about expectations. And also, I didn't come into the industry as, so I'm in the moving industry. I'm a man in Dolly, little plug there. But but guys would oftentimes and do oftentimes apply, and they'll tell me their experience and they'll make it sound real grand. And then you'll get here and I have this, like, this little, it's like a someone telling me they're a hawk and arriving as a pigeon. Like, the level of disappointment is almost traumatic on my end. And it's like, well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you show up. But anyway, so we were talking through this and I started to really grasp the perspective of the employee. And, like, I sort of get it. While I don't like it, I get that that's how the market is, where you kind of, in my mind, fudge the your resume to make it look real pretty. And I get it, you want to get the job. Um, but my thing is, if you're gonna show up and you're gonna do a job, like, go and rock it. You know what I'm saying? Like flip and kill it, man. You know? Like show up on time, show up early, listen, learn, maybe do some research so that you can turn being a pigeon into maybe I don't know what in between a pigeon and a hawk is. Maybe a falcon, you know, in between that. I don't know. But but yeah, or a peacock. It looks better, you know. I don't. Um, but yeah. So so that's that, right? So I got that advice or that perspective that if you worked at a company for 10 years and let's say you've done a role, a part of that. Um, let's just stay to the whole bird thing. I don't know why I gravitated towards that, but that's where we're at, right? Let's say you worked maybe only out of 10 years, you worked 1 year as a hawk, but the rest of the years, or maybe 6 or 7 of the years, you were a pigeon, and then the remaining years, you were a you were a falcon, right? And you put on your resume to apply for a hawk's position, but you've really only been a pigeon 90% of the time, and then you show up, and I'm expecting as an entrepreneur who's been an entrepreneur 95% of his work experience at this point, then you're expecting a hawk. You're expecting someone who's like gonna come in, swoop down, and freaking just kill it, right? So anyway, so that's what I got there. I understood that it's like, but what really hit for was when my big brother said that, every company has their own way of doing things. And if you come in as a hawk and you're pre-trained and you've been a hawk and you come on and oh, you're a hawk, but we do hawk things this way, right? So I'm laughing because I hitched my wagon to the whole bird reference, um but yeah, so it so I get it, right? I do have some sort of training and I want you to become how I want, and there's natural training that comes, but in that process of looking, and this is where I tied it to something else, and I'll get to that here in a second, but uh when I'm applying, like I would like to vet those people as much as possible, right? I personally don't want to have as much training as like I've had to, right? When having people wanting people to do things the way that I want them to do, right? And so while I unpack this, and honestly, I think a lot of it happened subconsciously while I was just sleeping. Um, because now I'm like, I'm opening it up and I'm starting to see some of the other ways that I sort of, this same mentality that I've had, this frustration with a lot of things, uh, has really came to light, to the surface, because and so my first reference was to the dating scene, right? So we have this saying in between male and female dating that everybody's looking for the perfect mate right now, right? So there's this thing where people have the condition that I have as far as entrepreneurships in dating, right? Uh, and one another thing that my brother said is he said that nobody's as passionate about your business more than you are. And I've always known this, but it just having it mentioned again really helped, right? So it's the same thing when it comes to the dating world, is that nobody's as passionate or as insistent about your significant other having the things that they have more than you are, right? And then vice versa. So you're both sitting there looking for these specific, very specific things. And one experience that I've had is that if there's any inclination, and I've noticed this also in the hiring phases, is like if I see anything that kind of looks like something else, even though it could just be, something similar, right? If someone presents, they don't present themselves very well, and maybe uh, or maybe they're just presenting themselves flawed, which is a human quality. And I pick up on some things that might lead to, or maybe they're using words that might imply that they're unreliable or something like that. Then I gravitate towards that and I want to dig and I dig and I dig to try to make sure, okay, we're not we're not doing that, right? Or I find out that they are. But oftentimes I find that some people don't even dig. They just, in their mind, they're like, oh, that looks like you're this, or this. And then boom, they're gone, right? And I accept that, right? But I accept that, yet I know that's a part of the process. But I just want to and I almost wish that I could, sort of put this out there to some of the individuals, because some of the people that I meet that do this, I see it happening in real time as we're sort of dating or talking. I can see it, and it's not my responsibility to sit there and try to help you to understand what really is. It's your job to dial in to ensure, what really is. That actually was very well said. I just gotta say myself. But I'm also seeing some of the other applications is I have in life, I have some certain things that I see myself less than. Uh, and I'm going to pause there. I'm going to go back to something my brother said. Is that he said that your expectations, meaning my expectations, have been drastically inflated. And I know this. I know this. I'm very competitive. I like it when I do something. I want to do it great. I want to do it perfect. And I see myself so far from where I should be, if you will, right? Even as me being in the moving profession, I still see myself as I can acknowledge I'm an above average mover, sure. Uh, but I still see so far that I have to go to be so many skills, so many things that I haven't done as often as I feel like in my mind, what a professional mover would would have. So back to the expectation, is it like that? That's one place that it shows up. My high expectations, and sometimes I don't. I needed this comparison to where my expectations are and the market is. And while I'm not saying that I'm going to or that I should lower my expectations, but I should be more patient. And sometimes I would have to either train up or dig for the gold that I'm expecting. And I'm not sure if that makes sense, but it's like, for example, we can go back to the dating sort of realm. Is it if I'm talking to a girl, I've dealt with, uh, okay, I don't want to get too personal, but I've dated an alcoholic, right? And it currently, um, whenever I see that, I'm always a little attentive. If I see someone drinking, I pay attention to their habits. When they get inebriated, I'm sort of more aware than maybe your average person would be, and so, but I could see how I could be more, I guess, uh, patient in that process. And some, oftentimes, when I see other people dealing with that same like expectation to reality or marketplace, then there's very little patience. There's very little digging to find out what is really there. Are there any gems under the surface? And that's sort of a process. And it's a process that I actually would say that I would enjoy now that I know that it needs to be a process as opposed to me expecting, like, if I spend some money for some things, right? I work hard for my money. I do. And so it's like, if I'm going to pay for a service, which that's what I take it as, is I take each employee in my mind. This is how I see it. Before this was really broken down to me, is that I see each employee as a service provider, as their own individual business in my mind, right? I mean, if you think about it, right, being an employee, you have a gift, a gift of the ability that us entrepreneurs, we don't have. We entrepreneurs don't have the ability to just focus a lot of the time. Now, there's some that have built the housing to allow us to do this, but you get to hop into one role, one job, and just do that one thing great. That's a gift. That's a blessing. Me as a mover, as a moving company, as a moving company owner, I I have to be a salesperson because I'm on the phone. I got to do quotes. I got to go out to do jobs. I got to be a counselor because I get a lot of people that are very in high stress situations. I got to dial them back so that I could get the information I need. And I've got to manage expectations whenever I'm on the job. They're in high stress. They're going through all this, they're expecting certain things, but getting a reality, I got to manage that sort of expectation to reality so that it's just high enough to where we can meet it, but not too high to where they expect it. I would like them to expect here, but get here. That way we get the review. Uh, but yeah, I sort of lost my I sort of lost my train of thought there. But my point, yeah, wow, I totally lost my point there. Oh wow. All right, that was bad. But the point that I'm trying to make is that having that when it comes to managing, hiring, and dealing with people, and now that I'm armed with this knowledge, I can we'll take it somewhere else because I totally lost where I was. I don't that really just doesn't happen like that, but it did. So we move on. So I I sometimes this will play out. I've noticed now that I'm like taking this new perspective. It's really what it is. A lot of it, people take things as advice. I take things as perspective, and perspective can be distributed amongst many different situations. And whereas advice is very singular, like you should do this or you should think about this in this way specifically. Whereas uh, perspective can be like a lens that you can see certain things. But anyway, this is really very helpful to me because it allows me to humanize the expectations that I've placed on myself, right? I have extremely high expectations of myself, and I think now I can at least acknowledge the fact, and I'm always like subconsciously acknowledge the fact that I'm human, right? I'm not what have you. But I think finding a middle ground really places me closer to where I don't feel like I'm so far from where I should be. And I think I've always sort of seen my expectations of like where I should be in life, where I should be as a businessman, as I should be in so many different realms. It's sort of like it's a big eye opener for me. This is right, and it's so helpful and even freeing, if you will, that I don't have to be perfect. And I'm still not. It's still not in my mo to really just be like, oh well, all right, well I don't really have to try, But it sort of allows me to realize that I'm not on training wheels, right? Because I felt like I'm already at the little. And if you know about the bike, whenever kids are learning to ride a bike, they have the bike that where they have no pedals and no training wheels. They just have their feet, and they use their feet to start training them how to balance. I'm not sure if those are just called a training bike or what have you, or if all they do is just take off. Is that do they? I don't know. I don't even think those things come with pedals, like the pedal installation. Even though that wouldn't make sense. Like, why wouldn't you at least allow? Uh, So this is a lot of the times whenever I stop to like laugh or something like that, it's because of what I'm talking about, right? Because I have an expectation for like how I'm supposed to present something, right? Or how I'm supposed to explain something or go into. And I have all these expectations surrounding this that are, again, they're up here. And while I feel like I'm so far from it, even below like market value, because I feel like I'm like, it's ridiculous, right? I already want to automatically be like one of the people that do the TED Talk, right? And no ands, no uhs, no all of that. And at times I can do that. But these are all the things that are kind of going subconsciously, and that's why sometimes I got to laugh at myself. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, um, I hope this was an eye opener. I just felt led to share this. I think it's good perspective to have. I think that it could be helpful. It was very helpful to me, and I'm excited to see where this is going to go. Like, how am I going to utilize this information now? So, yeah, have a good one.